Right. Did you try? So did you get your? Did you try find it or find if?
I tried it, but in the reference manual it tells you what find if basically does.
Yeah.
So what it does is that the conditional which you send in, it checks that if the list isn't ended yet, it will run that conditional function with the iterator. So in my case, I did a comparison with two data structures. So find if couldn't send my parameters into the boolean because it only takes the
unary
iterator, if
yep.
not m, and pass it into the conditional.
Yeah.
So, but I did parse it out or take it out to its own function, but find if didn't work in my case.
Okay, so find if didn't work. You can probably make find if work, but only if you had, so the unary function, if you're using lambdas and you generated the function from the comparator that you then passed in the thing to, so using lambda functions you could probably do it, but that would probably make your code unmaintainable, right? Because have you used lambdas? Some. So you know what a lambda function is, that's kind of generated on the fly at the time you need it with parameters that you need. And so yes, if you have a unary function, you can create a lambda version, it will implement it, and yes, yeah, no, but it looks very complex, right? So if you can avoid it, it's probably better. The other thing to say was, as we're just saying, if what you're trying to do is create a new list of some type, right? So filtered list. If you find, yeah, so when you change it to a function, you say filtered list equals return from function. That then when I'm reading this code, you go, oh yeah, okay, it's very clear what's happening at that point. So yeah, I would say that's a kind of reads better, even if there's no actual kind of real code difference. So, yep. Right, so I can actually shrink that down. It was the only way I could do an easy way of streaming myself up to large. Right, okay, so having run and got my children. Right, who wants to show off some code? You guys had a function you wanted to talk through. Yep, I have cable. So do you guys have any questions before Easter?
What are we going to do in Easter?
What am I going to do in Easter? So partly what I'm doing is I'll probably have to paint part of my house to try and sell it. I will be working on a Horizon 2020 reports for the CityCop project. We might be going to Renna to visit people to say goodbye because we're leaving Norway. And I'll probably organise a going away party for various groups of people. So PMS is trying to organise the students going away party. I've talked to Rachel and she actually said that we can have it at our house because we'll have lots of lawn and barbecue. So we could actually have it at our house rather than student who's it. Right.
With an open bar right in there, with a bar where people and buy stuff up.
Okay.
Well, someone's lawn and we don't have to spend that much.
So some option of doing that. So I'll probably sort of organise that over Easter, and a party for some of the alumni students who have kind of left as well. So but also invite them to that if they want to come. So and yeah. working with some of the PhD students on their serious games projects. So yeah, so that's my celebration of zombie apocalypse. So what else do you call dead people rising from out of graves? It's obviously, you know, the first one-man zombie apocalypse. So, you know.
Think apocalypse have a larger scale?
Well, if you talk about, you know, the some of the stories where you have like the reckoning and the second coming is the end of the world. So he's just a really slow apocalypse. I know, it's a one-man, very slow apocalypse.
Christianity did change a lot of things.
Just like a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are certain records of people being declared dead, and then afterwards they have risen.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from Christianity, then.
Yes.
But that also depends on the definition of dead. Because it's not that hard in America to be declared dead and then come back alive. It's a lot harder in Europe. In Europe.
I read this week about a guy in some Southern American country which had been declared dead 7 years ago or something, and he had gotten his death papers and he tried to appeal it in court when he actually figured it out, and that case was denied, so he's still declared dead even though it's tried. A
Yeah.
good way to evade taxes, at least.
Hard, but might be hard to get a job. We hire dead people. Okay, so you have some code here, and I have made it big on screen.
Yeah, so basically this is the code for tracking the gaze of the user and sending mouse clicks to the browser. So we did some kind of tinkering right now, so it's in earlier, it's about 5 minutes ago.
Did you intentionally tinker with it to make it uglier, or is this just a side effect of...
Let's try this out, and then like maybe we shouldn't have.
We shouldn't have just done this right now, so... Okay. So can you zoom up just a bit for your...
Yeah, sure. Okay, or not.
Aha! Woo, woo! Yeah.
Too
Yep.
close, maybe?
No, that's fine. That's fine. Why am I... Why is this screen not showing?
Yeah, okay. So
That's great.
what it does is it checks the position of the pointer by the case point.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's it then checks the trigger, which is the V part. Still too close for me.
Yes, you could make it that better.
Yeah. So the first functionality, first step check is checking how much you move. So pretty simple. It's just checking if you move it in so much in the X or Y direction, and if it does, it cancels a click. So it works on a timer. It's that, or else it just says click is true, and as long as click is true, it increases the alpha of or decreases.
So is there a...
It makes the object less see-through. So that would be
Is there a particular reason why this is outside of this loop? Because I assume because you need to have done this stuff before this. Because does this bit of code here set this to false? It does.
Yeah.
So this does not run if this passes. It only runs in here.
Yeah.
Why isn't this code in here?
That's a good point. So yeah.
Okay, because you can still set click to true. It's just that if this is the only, like, is there any, like, and if, like, yeah,
Yeah, it should only be an if else. Actually.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay, so first part of refactoring, you don't. You can still. I mean, it may be that you do use click, the value of the click somewhere else, but if this is the only time you're using that click, then.
That's why I'm showing it. So.
Yeah. Okay. So so we're going to refactor that anyway. So down here we have. So if the click time is less than 1.
This is the thing we did about 3 minutes ago.
Yep.
Which is just getting this scene and sending it. So
Oh no, go back up. I haven't finished fixing this yet. Okay, so here you've got, so back up. Yep. So you've got an if time is less than 1, you alpha increase.
Yeah.
So if it's greater than 1, you don't alpha increase. What does alpha increase do? It's obviously a side effect function.
So we have the pointer, it's a circle with a small pointer, which is the exact pointer.
Yep.
And it increases the alpha, so it becomes less see-through, so that when you're looking at something specific, you can see that it's clicking.
The object use a transparent shader so that it won't obstruct what's underneath it, and to show that you're currently clicking, we're making the object more blue and less see-through whilst you're clicking.
Okay, so
And
I would still, so here conceptually this is referring to some object.
Yep.
Is this my is the object the class that I'm in?
No, it's not a class unit.
Okay, so it's referring to some other
It's
object.
referring to an object that is part of the class already, and it's only existing in that class. Yes.
Right. So there is an object in the class that I'm in.
Yep.
There's a variable, or there's
It's a game object.
a game object that is in this class, right? I would still like to see the game object name here and dot alpha increase, right? Just because then it's very explicit what gets increased,
Yeah.
right? Even though you don't technically need it, it's just alpha increase of, right? And it could even be, because you've got pointer object.
Yeah, so it's pointed, so alpha increase type.
Yeah. So if you've got a local object that's a pointer, tell that local object, that local object pointer increase, right? Even though you don't need to, because yes, I know in alpha increase you probably say pointer.alpha gets, yeah? But this is more explicit about what's going on,
Yeah.
right? So it should be, so that should be pointer.alpha increase, and that's probably fine. As other feedback from you guys, do you think? Would you agree that if I said pointer dot would be clearer?
I agree with that, but I'm wondering about what one represents in the if statement. So what is one?
Is this a true false, or is this a floating point length of time?
Yeah,
Is it?
next time.
So it's a floating point length of time. Right. Yes. Good catch.
Better would actually
No.
or
What?
to describe it, what it is.
No. No. That's no. 1 is bad, right?
Yeah.
But click time divided by 2 is like what? Why is it click time divided by 2?
Because if it starts increasing as soon as you start clicking, it's kind of blinking all the time. It's explained like that. So if you're looking on the screen and you're not trying to click, but if you focus on somewhere like for half a second, it starts increasing.
Okay, so it should start increasing. Well, click time is less than. Oh, I better check this. Hello. Jason's already walked from home. Yep. Okay. Right. I gave him my key. Okay. Right. Bye. Okay. Yeah. Just sort of my kids. Right. So. Okay. So. This says something about being less than some length of time. That it increases the alpha. Yeah. So you say there's a short length of time and there's a maximum length of time.
Or the short length of what time, kind of what?
Well, so you say click timer here, right? So what does click timer represent?
The click timer represents the time it takes to count down from. So click timer is the timer that counts how long you look at a certain point.
Right.
So the timer to it clicks.
Right, so the click timer is counting up from 0, saying when you first look at something, it's got 0?
It's counting down.
It's counting down. So you set it as...
At the click time. It's so you define click time like this is how long it should take to click, so you can change it.
Okay, right. So the click timer is the, I would say, probably click countdown would be a better name for it, because it is a countdown until it clicks. Right?
And with the 1, I'm fine with it being 1, but if it just being a constant name, some threshold value, it could be 1, but in the code itself, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So you should be able to right click on that and refactor to get it to change its name everywhere. Or have you already done that?
Yeah.
Okay. If you've already fixed it everywhere, that's all right then. Yeah. So there's usually a way when you change it, you can right click in it and just tell it to refactor it to the other name when you first change it. So, but you've already changed half of it now. So yeah. But yeah, so in Visual Studio you can actually do a refactor and it will take all of the references to it and update it.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay. So actually, I think yes. If you where do you declare this now? This click countdown. So click countdown is while it's if it's less than 1, you do the alpha increase. So, yes, so now I understand why you mean click time divided by 2,
Yeah.
right? Because this is for the first half length of time. However, I would, so I agree here that it's fine, it could be set to the value 1, right? But it should be a named variable, right? Which is, so I would also name it, so you're doing a counter down, you're counting down from some high value you've set. So this is 1 second, is this in seconds?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is actually a 1 second. So it's, and so what would be the appropriate name for the kind of prepare to click? It's the pre-click time.
Pre-click time. So 1
Right?
second to click or...
Yeah, so basically 1 second to click is, or the
Threshold or...
yeah, or like click show time or something like that, right? So it's 1 second, which is the pre-click display, right? So while it's less than pre-click, yeah. I wouldn't say second to click.
Yeah, that sounds like 2.
Yeah, I'd say pre-click, something like pre-click display. Right, so pre-click display. So if the countdown is less than pre-click display, it's going to increase the alpha. Right, because that's, yeah, that is kind of, yeah, so click countdown is less than pre-click display, then increase alpha. Okay, so now that reads as something I now understand. The values you set for pre-click display as being, you would probably set it as half click time if you felt that it should be half click time. But probably for UI purposes, with humans, you might still decide I want 1 second. So I'll set it to 1.f or 1.0f. So it's actually, say it's a floating point number, otherwise it could be an integer, which is either an on or off rather than a floating point value that happens to be 1 second. And when you set this, you'd actually say things like like the pre-display time of 1 second, right? And then you could have the length of time before that being variable, right? So some people might want to be slower as they look around, so 1 second might not be long enough. They may want it to wait longer before it starts to click on them.
Yeah.
So that should be adjustable. But it might not want to be directly related to that 1 second before it clicks, right? Because that might not, they might want to say, no, I want to be able to look around, but when I start focusing on something, as soon as I start seeing it, that gives me 1 second to look away if I didn't want to click, right? So if I want that shorter, I don't want to have less time to choose that. And if I've got a 4 second wander time, I don't need another 4 seconds of choice time after that, right? So those could be very different variables. So I wouldn't bind them together in here either. I would have this as its own pre-click display time and a I wander time. Right? So yeah. So okay. So then you do pointer alpha increase, which would tell me what you're increasing.
This is kind of changing between scenes, so it's we're gonna remove it.
Yeah, anyway, but yeah, so we got click down deprecates by time delta time. Yeah, okay, that's reasonable. If the countdown is less, so if you've clicked,
Yeah.
then you are going to check which scene you're in, and then send a click to the appropriate object.
So that's not.
Yeah.
It's just it makes it more complicated, so it shouldn't be like that. So.
Yeah, but yeah, what I'm thinking is basically, yeah, you shouldn't, this block of logic probably isn't in the clicking file. It's probably, oh, I've had a click, I'll return there was a click, and then I'll have something outside that will determine where that click goes.
Yeah.
Right? And I'd either potentially, if you had the send click to, you could have, when it gets to 0, send click, and you would have passed in a function, right? If you knew there was only one thing listening to the click,
Yeah.
you could have a listener pattern. You could have a kind of basically the return pattern, the callback pattern. So you would pass the callback into this function, saying which function should be called when I register a click,
Yeah.
right? And then you don't have that logic in here. You have it outside. Yeah. So you guys know the callback function? Yeah. So a callback pattern. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So
So this is the.
alpha decrease.
Yeah. So once you click, it sets it back to see-through.
Right. That's not decrease.
Reset.
Reset.
Yes. And again, it should be pointer dot reset alpha. Because decrease would mean not a reset to 0. Right? And you might even do pointer dot set alpha clear, or set alpha 0, or something, right? So I might even do a set alpha and pass in, I might do set alpha and pass in the value 0.
Yeah, that actually works much better.
Right? So set alpha 0.
So we'll do that here as well.
So, well, the pointer
It
increase.
needs to, no, so it needs to be set. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one could be. I would actually, to simply rather than say 0, I would actually say 0.0f. Right? I'd say set it. So I know it's being reset to 0, which is the. Is alpha transparent? So 0 is transparent.
Yes, here's transparent.
Yeah. So if I was being really pedantic, I wouldn't say value here. I'd do set alpha transparent, and I'd have transparent up the top set as 0.
Yeah,
As a const, an enum basically, yeah.
Something like that.
Right? So, yeah.
Maybe it could be an enum in pointer, where it's
In-
statically accessed.
Yeah, so it could be that it would be pointer dot transparent.
Yes.
Right? So pointer to class.
Yeah.
In the pointer class, you could put in an enum that was for transparent, and then you'd have in here pointer dot transparent, and it would know that that was 0. Right? Because again, this does exactly what you like. This has some setting of the alpha to 0, right, inside it, right, and it's a function call. But alpha decrease doesn't tell me as much as this tells me.
Yeah, so more like the clear code kind of thing.
Yeah. This is more descriptive of what's going on, and is kind of equally complex / simple, right? So I would prefer if your code told me more what it did. So yeah, and the advantage of actually saying the word transparent here, and why I went away from saying 0.0f, is because depending on your system, some use transparency and some use alpha, and alpha of 0 is see-through and alpha of 1 is opaque, but transparency of 1 is see-through and transparency of 0 is opaque. So it's a which one is 1 again? So if you say transparent, I know what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
Further down to kind of be not a good point. So, this is the
So that was the good code. Oh, great. I'm
this
good.
is the really ugly part. So this is where it takes the click and translates it and sends it to the browser. Yeah, sort of top. So this is kind of, I guess, Frankenstein code to describe it.
So pointer in browser, project plane to world, gaze point. Pointer in browser equals smoothify pointer in browser. Okay, so it makes smooth version. Pointer in screen space is the main camera world to screen point pointer in browser. So raycast browser canvas project plane world gaze point. So we got gaze point from right, and so I would have thought screen space would be easier than browser space, but why does browser space happen first? Why, like, so this point in browser projecting onto screen space here.
Yeah.
Normally I'd think of that the other way around. Normally I'd think I'd get something in screen space and then a projector into browser space. But do you guys get a project into world gaze point? Is that actually into a browser and then you have to project it out into green space?
I think I might reverse the names and I wrote it down.
So I would have assumed, personally I'd assume that this would have come out in screen space and then you would smooth it in screen space,
Yeah.
and then in browser space you would have got world to screen point from world to, this should be not in browser, but this should be in world or something, right? So like I would expect world to screen point
Yeah.
should be from, not from browser, but from world point. So pointer in world, because pointer in browser sounds like you mean a web browser.
Yep.
And so it gives you a point in the world, and then it gives, so you can get that point in on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, so I translated from in world to screen space so we can affect the mouse instead of like looking at a 3D object at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So transform unity rect. So transform unity. Screen point to local point in rectangle. Browser.transform as rect transform pointer in screen space, raycast event camera, and you give it a local position. So that now is actually in the browser.
Yeah, so
Yep.
I wrote that I don't know what it does, but what I think it does is you say that you translate from coordinates in screen space and then say that, okay, so pretend that those coordinates are in this specific area. And then give them local coordinates.
Screen point to local point in rectangle. So what this is saying is, so your browser, right? So the browser window you have has a rectangle, which is its display area.
Yeah.
So you're taking that as a rect transform. So you're taking the full browser information, you're turning it into rect transform.
Yeah.
You pass in the pointer in space, which is a pointer in space.
Yeah.
The Raycaster event camera will, that's I think the thing that does the actual work. It's saying, okay, so the Raycaster is where your head is, and the ray is the screen point, and so I go from your head through the screen point, and that's the ray I've got, and so therefore I get my local position out, which is the position from this top corner in, rather than from the from the screen corner in.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yep.
because it does UT, I think, goes from it's either 0, 0 bottom left or 0, 0 top left.
It's always a challenge.
Yeah. So but translating that to like register locally in that specific square, so I can send the right coordinates because the square registers from 0, 0 in one space. And
Yeah. No, I understand that there's a bunch of transforms going on here. So browser transform equals TRNS. Why is that just your shortening? transform?
Pretty
Trans?
much just use that, follow the kind of the code that was in you wrote it. So it's just short for transform.
Right. So this is probably, yes, so this is actually browser rect. Browser rect transform is what this is. So browser rect transform dot rect. So I would call it browser rect transform, just because it is your browser dot transform as a rect transform. So I'd say it was browser rect transform would be what I would call it. Concatenate the names. And if you right click on that, you should, do you have an ability to refactor it? Okay, you've already changed. It's the only place to use it. Yep. So, all right. Okay. So when you go to the definition of, so go back to the definition. If you right click on this definition here, right click up there, you have like this rename option here. We'll rename all of them. So that's what you, like, use your right click menu. It's got lots of useful stuff in it.
Yeah.
Okay? So it makes a whole bunch of things a lot faster when you can do that. And also because it's Visual Studio doing it, it knows where all the times it's actually used, and you can either choose to change it in all of the comments as well, or not. So yeah, lets you do clever things. But okay, so okay, find pointer location inside browser. So no idea what this does to do. So you're going to replace that with actually saying what it does.
Yeah. So
Like translate from screen space to local space, local position, or something, I would say. Because that's what you're getting out back here, is you're getting local pos y equals something, and local pos x equals something. Where does local pos x get set? Because this is local pos x here, it gets multiplied.
This isn't needed actually. So it's just, I forgot to delete it.
Okay. But where do these get set? Because this is a multiplier. So where do these come from?
This one's from yeah.
Ah, local pos, it gets set there, right. Okay, so yep, local pos. And they're being affected by the browser width. You multiply them by the browser width and you divide them by the browser rect width. What are you doing there?
I'm taking the finding the size of the browsers and translating coordinates to fit inside.
So the local position multiplied by the browser component width divided by the browser.
Yeah, I realize now that no.
Are you dividing it? Are you multiplying it by something and then dividing it by the same value?
Yeah, I am. You know when you're doing something and it makes sense and it works and you're like, okay, I'm just keeping it in.
That looks like it might be. Yeah. I think it works, but I think it's multiplying itself by 1. Right. Okay. So. Yep.
I was tired.
Yeah. Yes. So send a mouse event to browser, and that is what are we doing? Why are we doing it twice?
Oh, because you need to send a click and a release.
Oh, a mouse press and a mouse release.
Yeah.
Okay. So you send a mouse down and a mouse up
Yeah, or else it just hold.
simultaneously.
Oh.
Go, come back this way. I'm assuming send mouse event is blocking. It isn't asynchronous, and so it doesn't send an event and then continue with the code, seeing it's a command that goes outside of the program.
Yeah.
Because if it's blocking, it will wait for it to complete before it sends the next one. If it's non-blocking call, it will send this one and then immediately go to the next one and send the next one, regardless of whether that one actually got sent. Which means it could be that an optimizer later might decide to send them simultaneously or potentially in the reverse order, because if it's non-blocking, then one might get blocked. And so I would always worry a little bit about sending both a click and an up and a down basically simultaneously.
Yeah, so put a timer or
yeah, I know.
Block.
If it failed, that would be something I would check, right? If sometimes it didn't click properly, this would be something I would check, right? I would assume at this stage it's going to retain order, that it hasn't optimized its way out of order. But
It might do.
I always worry about that sort of thing when when you're talking between two systems, right? When I'm communicating from my program to another program that's outside of my control, how my network communication works and my inter-process communication works, guaranteeing order is one of those things we worry about.
We've already had concurrency issues because Unity has optimized things so that things didn't happen when they were supposed to. They'll fix it just by moving where in the logic we actually wanted it to happen.
Yep.
So that now the logic should be able to finish up the things that were problematic. It also has to do the thing that we wanted to do afterwards.
Yeah. So I would potentially have a 1 second delay in here, or not a 1 second delay. I mean a 1 frame delay in here, or something, right? Just to say, mouse down, 1 frame, mouse up.
Yeah.
Just in case. I worry about these things because what you're doing is you're simulating a keyboard at that point, right? And the keyboard has its own buffer which it keeps in order when it sends stuff, right? So I don't know how good the send mouse button event does its buffering. Right? So that's, worry about that. That's the thing to think about anyway. Okay, so when I look at this code, so go back up to the top, right? Send mouse click to browser. Is some of this code what happens with every sub-window? And or is this all unique to just the browser and every other window does its thing separately? Because I suppose we've got like this browser transform thing here is just something that a browser has and not every window will have a transform. Or does every window have a transform?
Like every single window in the browser?
Well, I mean, so every time you interact, is there a way of saying, well, this is a generic way of finding my local position, so can I separate it from the browser logic and just say, this bit of code here is, whatever I'm sending to .transform, right? So just say, anytime there's a window on screen, I will do a generic translate to local coordinates and send click to that window at that coordinate, and so make this more generic and say this is my way of sending a click to any window on this operating system. You give me a hook to that window and I'll just run my local transform for that window.
No, this is pretty much only the browser that does that.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Because I'm thinking like for some of these,
it's very non-general. It's very
browser window specific.
Yeah.
Or is it Windows specific?
No, it's browser window specific. So.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just kind of checking to see where the logic fits, right? Because this bit of logic here, browser.transform, looks like it's a generic Windows thing rather than I would have to know this was a Microsoft Edge window for it to have these properties, right? So yeah, okay. But you haven't done it for other windows?
No, not really.
Right, so it may be that every window is the same. So this may not be browser specific.
So if it isn't, then we have to rename it and make it more general.
To actually say,
It hasn't been an issue.
No, because you've only been doing it for a browser.
Yeah, and we only have the browser window that is currently operating as a browser window, but not as part of a Unity UI canvas or something. It's all different.
Yeah.
Right, because these are Unity UI canvases. So this is, yeah, okay.
So the browser functions differently because its logic operates within its own workspace. And so we need to know where in the window from the Windows code that we're actually pressing, whilst everything else we can do with screen space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, that's it. Okay, so, yep. Now it's unfortunately it's after 4 o'clock. So right, I should let you guys go to Easter. Seeing it's time to eat too much chocolate and vomit repeatedly.
When we wish. Well, if you pay, of course.
So yes, have a good Easter, people on the thing. So hopefully this was an interesting discussion on coding formats and yes, code review. So we'll see you after Easter.